DreAllDay.com.
You're now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques underneath the umbrella of one unified philosophy that is called work on your game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is how to play a lawyer on the internet. Now, I'll explain to you what this means in a minute. But first of all, let me tell you a couple things. My text message number is down below in the description to this episode. Once we start sending it out again, you'll be getting that straight to your phone. I'll tell you more when it's time. Secondly, Work on Your Game University. If you would like to have me as your direct coach, if you hear the things that I say on this show, you see my style, you see my approach, you hear the topics that I discuss. If anything you've ever heard me talk about on this show could help you take your game to the next level, or the way that I do it can help you take your game to the next level in whatever it is that you do, personally and or professionally, and I think the answer is yes, because all of you listen to the show, go to workonyourgameuniversity.com, find out how to have me as your coach, take the next step, and let's take it from there. All that being said, let's get into this topic here today, which is how to play a lawyer on the internet. Now, this one is actually somewhat tongue-in-cheek. It is somewhat metaphorical, and it's a bit of a joke, but I'm going to address it because it actually is kind of funny where it came from. And this is going to be a two-part series, by the way. So this one started off as this topic started as actually a question that I was receiving during one of my live streams that I do on social media. I do a live stream Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. Eastern, if you want to see it, any of you who's available at that time. So it's on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Rumble, X, Instagram, and TikTok, all at the same time. I'm multi-streaming 7 different platforms at the same time. And also the replays, you can find them on YouTube, by the way. And someone on TikTok asked the question, and then it became more of a thing because every day when I was doing a live stream, especially when I was talking about certain topics that involved legal matters, I would get asked the same question. I was being seriously asked the question if I was a lawyer. People would ask me almost every day, are you a lawyer? And one of the reasons, actually, I'm not even going to tell you the reasons, because when I get to my points, I'm going to explain what all the reasons are. And it got to the point that it almost became a running joke amongst my live streaming audiences because every day somebody was asking me if I was a lawyer. So today I'm going to explain the exact steps that a person must take, that could be you or anyone else, if you would like to play a lawyer on the internet, as I seem to be doing in an expert way. So just in case any of you did not know, no, I am not a lawyer. I do not have a law degree. I did not study law. I do have a degree, I have a business degree, but I never took a law course. I don't think I did. And if I did, actually, I did take a law course. Let me back up. I took a business law course because to get a business degree from Penn State University at the time that I was there, you had to take a business law course. And it was taught by a guy who was an actual lawyer. And if you just think about what that was like, it was actually very boring, but the guy did actually know his stuff. I respect the fact that he knew his stuff because he was an actual business lawyer. But anyway, I am not a lawyer, but because of all the things I'm going to list in today and tomorrow's episodes, people will look at me, not knowing me from anywhere. Some of you have known about me for a long time. You know my background. So you might even think it funny to think that someone would think I'm a lawyer, but people who never heard of me and they come across me when I'm talking the way that I talk, they listen and they're like, are you a lawyer? Like the way I do a whole bunch of things. Again, I'm going to get into my points. So let's get to it. Point number 1. Today's topic, once again, is how to play a lawyer on the internet. Number 1, wear a suit. Again, these are not jokes. What I'm going to explain to you in this series are the things that I do that I have, by deductive reasoning, come to figure out lead to people looking at me and assuming that I must be an attorney. All right, so all 6 of these points, I'm going to share 3 today and 3 tomorrow, will help you understand why other people look at me and think that I must be a lawyer. So number 1 is wear a suit. Right? I mean that literally, wear a suit. I've had many people, and this is not just online, not just on TikTok, offline, in person, ask me if I am a lawyer. In person, I get people asking me if I'm a lawyer because they see me a few times or all the time, and I'm always in a suit. And also, just by the way that I carry myself, I guess maybe they think I'm a lawyer. So both online and offline, I get this question. Some people have thought, I've had people say to me, well, Dre, I thought you worked in finance in some way. Or I guess the general expectation of a lawyer is that they are dressed pretty formally. And when I think about it, have you ever seen a lawyer walking around in a t-shirt and shorts? Well, maybe you have if you know an actual lawyer, but when they're working or they're going to work or coming from work, a lawyer is usually dressed very formally. So you can't play lawyer dressed how I used to dress before I started wearing suits every day, like wearing a t-shirt and sweatpants and basketball sneakers and snapback hats. Can't play lawyer that way. Nobody will believe that you're a lawyer. No one would even suspect that you're a lawyer if you were dressed in a non-lawyer uniform. So if you want to play lawyer on the internet, invest in a suit or three if you're going to try to play this role and you want people to believe it. So now, let's be clear. There are people out there who will say, hey, I'm one of those people that what you're wearing does not necessarily make you the thing. And it's also true that what you're wearing doesn't make you the thing. So wearing a suit doesn't necessarily make you a lawyer. Or I've had people who disagree with me in my live streams, whatever I'm talking about. They'll be in the comments like, oh, just because you're wearing a suit doesn't mean you're smart. Or just because you can articulate doesn't mean you know what you're talking about. Or just because you got a bookshelf behind you with a bunch of books on it doesn't mean that you're educated. I have people saying things like that often, and generally it's correct. Because before I was wearing suits all the time, I was wearing white t-shirts and basketball shorts and Jordan sneakers, and my material was exactly the same. So those of you who listen to this show through audio, I think I sound exactly the same now wearing a suit that I sounded when I was wearing a white t-shirt and shorts. I am dressed different, I look different, but I sound exactly the same. But people who have only seen me visually, or you're watching this on video while I'm talking, or you're seeing the clips that we put out on social media, you get a completely different impression of a person when they say something wearing a suit versus when they say it wearing a white t-shirt, even if they're saying the exact same thing. The presentation matters to people's perceptions. And you, as the person who's putting yourself out there, you should consider what type of perception do you want to put in people's minds, because it's going to be based on what you're presenting. So you want to change the perception, you have to change the presentation. This is just the way that it works. So it is true, what you're wearing does not necessarily make you the thing. The same way putting on a pair of basketball shorts doesn't make you a basketball player. It's also true, as I just said, humans have a certain expectation of a certain look. If I tell you that a bunch of people in Washington, D.C. are sitting down to hammer out the details of some type of congressional bill, what do you suspect they're dressed like? You suspect they're dressed formally, because that's the expectation that we have of people who work in the government. Same thing if I said lawyers. There's a certain expectation. If I said athletes, you have a different expectation. Well, we have a certain picture in our head of what these people look like. So when I used to wear the white tees and the basketball shorts all the time, guess what people would guess that I was? When I would see people in the street or see them in the elevator in my buildings, what do you think they were guessing that I was? And when they would finally get around to asking me, what do you think? They would say, you look like a basketball player. You look like an athlete. What sport do you play? That's the question that I would get asked. Why? Because I look like an athlete. I was dressed in the uniform of an athlete. Nowadays, when I walk around wearing a suit and tie, I'm the same individual. People ask me, are you a lawyer? Are you some type of C-suite executive? Or do you work in finance? Why? Because I'm dressed in that uniform. So does this matter? Yes, it does. And I told you all, I did an episode on this very subject. And the episode was, let me tell you the number of the episode. I was talking to you why I started wearing suits. That was episode number 2245. And the reason was what I just explained to you, that I would often get people coming to me. Now, let me back up. I stopped playing basketball professionally in 2015. So it's been 10 years since I stopped playing, but I was still dressing in the same clothing off the court that I used to wear off the court when I was playing. Therefore, a lot of people would see me and they would assume that I was an athlete, because I'm still in good shape. I still work out every single day. And people look at my physique and look at my stature. I'm 6'4", and they would guess that I was a basketball player. I don't have a problem with people guessing that, because I did used to play basketball. Even on the weekends now, when I'm wearing white tees and basketball shorts, I still get people guessing that I'm a basketball player. I don't mind it. But at the same time, I didn't want everybody who I came across guessing that I was a basketball player, because I don't play basketball anymore. I didn't want to have to take the extra step of saying, well, I used to be, but now I do ABC. I'd rather them just go straight to the thing that I'm doing now rather than the thing that I used to do. So when I changed my appearance and I changed my clothing, now people go straight to, okay, you do some type of business. And I do. And many people who have only known me since I've been wearing a suit have a hard time visualizing me as an athlete, because they never saw me in that uniform. They only see me in this uniform that I'm wearing here today. So this is an interesting thing, that when you're consistent with your presentation, what type of impression you can have on people's minds. Because there are people out there with completely different impressions of me based on how they initially came across me. Moving on to point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is how to play a lawyer on the internet. Number 2, you must be articulate. Lawyers are usually pretty good with words. People with law degrees, they don't even have to be lawyers. People who have gotten a legal education usually are pretty good with their verbiage. They are compendious in explaining their positions, meaning they can make airtight arguments, usually, not always. Some of them are not that good, but they try. And they're able to help people understand the point that they're trying to make Even if you do not agree with the point, they're pretty good at getting you to understand it. But no lawyer, if you're any good, should ever leave a person confused as to what exactly you're saying, why you are saying it, or how you arrived there. If you're any good at being a lawyer, even if I disagree with your point, I should understand your point. Lawyers are usually pretty good with words. So if you want to play a lawyer on the internet, you need to be pretty good with your words. What are you saying? Why are you saying it? How did you arrive at your position? This ability to articulate is fundamental to being a TikTok lawyer. All right, and that's who I am. I'm the lawyer. I'm the TikTok lawyer. I may even create a whole brand around being a TikTok lawyer just because people keep asking me this question. So you got to be able to articulate. You have to explain positions and explain your position in very clear and compendous ways that help people understand where you're coming from and where you are arriving. And it's usually when I'm doing my live streams, people see how I'm dressed, but I could be, there's a lot of different professions where somebody may wear a suit. And it's when I start articulating and explaining things, it's usually once I get into the meat of my material when I'm talking to my live streams, that's when I get the question, are you a lawyer? When I start explaining things out and helping people understand, and I try to be as logical and as objective as possible, that's when I get that question, are you a lawyer? Because I think people can tell that I'm trying to be objective. I'm trying to be in the middle. Even if I have an opinion that goes one way or another, I'm trying to be as objective as possible in explaining what I'm saying and why I'm saying it. So if you want to be good at playing lawyer, you got to be able to explain. You want to be good at defending your position or prosecuting someone else's position, especially if it's a trashy position. You got to be really good with your words such that you can defend yourself, because people are going to challenge you. And you got to be able to break down somebody else's words so that they can't defend it, because some people are going to come to you with trashy arguments, and a good lawyer can dissect a trashy argument. All right. These are two things that I personally enjoy doing. All right. Not just since I became an internet lawyer, but I've always been the type of person who likes to, I'm able to verbally defend my positions, and I like to break down other people's bullshit positions through verbal back and forth. Some people even call it verbal combat. I don't have a problem calling it verbal combat. I don't have a problem partaking either. Usually lawyers are pretty good at that, at least the ones who are active trial lawyers. Moving on to point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is how to be an internet lawyer. Number 3, understand the details of things and be able to explain said details. We just touched on this in the second point. This is another piece that completes the picture of being a lawyer on TikTok. You must be able to break down and explain things in a way that many people may have heard of the subject, but don't quite understand the details. See, a lawyer can take a subject that you've heard of and they can break it down and help you understand how it really works, why certain things need to be done, and how it can be resolved in your favor. So a good lawyer will take something like a traffic ticket. Let's say you got a speeding ticket if you're going 65 miles per hour in a 55-mile-per-hour zone. You talk to a good lawyer, the lawyer will help explain, once they understand the details of your case, how they would go about breaking down the case, what they would do to talk to the lawyer, how they would explain certain situations, and why you can kind of get this ticket thrown out, and how you can keep it off your record, and how you keep the insurance company from increasing your premiums. A good lawyer can go and explain all of that in detail and make it sound really, really smooth. You got to be able to do that. That's what a good lawyer can do. You got to understand the details of things and be able to explain it. There are many people who have heard of things, but they don't quite understand the details, and or they could not explain the details. So any of you who has ever dealt with a lawyer, you ever hired a lawyer, if you've ever prepared a contract, or you ever actually clicked on a button and read the terms and conditions on a website that you signed up for, any of you ever read any or written any documentation that was prepared by the United States government, you are reading things that are written by lawyers. All right, lawyers write all that stuff. All that stuff is written by lawyers. It's called legalese. Legalese is the very complicated and very verbose language that lawyers use to, I believe that it is written to confuse you and to bore you and to make you not want to read the whole thing. And it's also where companies and entities have their lawyers slip some fine print, quote unquote fine print, into things, because they know most people are not going to read it because they don't want to go through the details. That's why legalese is usually written by lawyers for lawyers. So when someone sends you a contract, often an organization who gives you a contract, if they're even 10% honest, people who send you a contract will say something like, especially if their contract is written by a lawyer, they'll say to you, hey, you might want to have a lawyer take a look at this before you sign it, if they're trying to be honest. Or if you already have a lawyer, then your lawyer is going to take a look at it. Now, the exceptions are when people have plain language contracts. Plain language contracts are contracts that are written by people who are not trying to daze and confuse you with what the language is and is written in plain language that anybody can read and understand. That's a different situation. I'm talking about the legalese contracts where they're like 20 pages. Then the last time that any of you who has bought a house or any of you who's ever rented an apartment, you know how long those contracts are? They're like 20, 30 pages. Like, who wrote all that shit? Lawyers wrote that shit. All right, that's written by lawyers. All right, that's what it is. So you will notice that lawyers go into extreme detail. That's why the contracts are so long, to the point that the average person, again, wouldn't even want to read or try to understand what is being said. That's by design. They do that on purpose because they're trying to go over your head. Lawyers tend to write and say things to impress other lawyers. This happens in many industries. In the academic space, academics write and say things for other academics. They don't write for the everyday person. They write for other academics to impress them so that they can move up in their careers by impressing the other academics who are higher up than they are on the totem pole. If you want to be a lawyer on social media, like me, however, here's the difference. You got to make things relatable to the everyday person who does not have legal expertise. Now, I technically do not have legal expertise. Again, some of the things I'm saying here are tongue in cheek, and I'll try to point them out when they are. Sometimes I won't point them out. You just got to keep up so you can catch it. I do not have legal expertise, but I do have, again, this is my superpower. My best ability is my ability to take a complex concept and break it down into simple, everyday person terms. That's my best skill. And I was using this skill even when I was showing basketball players how to play basketball. I was breaking down the moves and the drills and the skills of basketball into plain language and then demonstrating to you how to do it. I just happen to have the ability to play basketball, and I had combined that with my ability to explain basketball is what gave me an opportunity in that space as an early influencer back in those days. Nowadays, I'm doing the same thing. It's just not related to basketball. It took mindset, personal development, professional development, business, strategy, systems, etc. I'm doing the exact same thing. I'm using the exact same skill, just in a different context. But that's my superpower. And again, this is the reason why I can play a lawyer on TikTok. So the good news about this is that many people do not understand some things that I would consider basic, like the difference between a criminal case and a civil case. I remember I was explaining that on TikTok and somebody said, "Are you a lawyer?" And again, that's part of the thing that kind of sparked the idea for this series. Or the difference between being charged with a crime versus actually going to trial for that crime. Those are not the same thing. Or the difference between being charged or accused of a crime and actually being guilty of a crime. A lot of people don't seem to understand that, especially when their emotions get in the way. That's another thing about lawyers. You have to be able to check your emotion at the door. So, or the difference between being convicted at trial and accepting a plea deal. Again, these are not the same thing. So your knowledge need not be super duper deep, but your knowledge just needs to be deeper than whoever you're talking to. And that applies to all of you. If you're going to be an expert at anything, you don't need to know everything. You just need to know more than the people you're talking to. Okay. You're only playing a lawyer on TikTok. Now, you're not an actual lawyer. So let's recap today's class. And again, we have more in tomorrow's episode. Let me recap this one, was how to play a lawyer on the internet. And again, this started because people were watching my live streams online, listening to me talking, asking me if I was a lawyer. They were seriously asking. Now, you know, and I know that I'm not a lawyer, but I got asked the question so many times I started to think, what is it about what I'm doing that has people asking me this damn question? And it led to what we're talking about here today and tomorrow. Number one, wear a suit. There's a certain uniform you expect when you hear the word lawyer. You got to be in uniform. Number two, be articulate. Lawyers are usually pretty good with words. They can explain themselves very well. They can, if they want to, talk circles around the average person. You must have this ability if you're going to be a lawyer. Number three, understand the details of things and be able to explain them. You got to be able to break things down, and most people think they understand, but they don't really understand. When they hear you talk about it, they realize how much they don't know. Your ability to break things down and explain them articulately and make them plain enough that the everyday person can understand is a key skill to being an internet lawyer. Tomorrow, I'm going to tell you 3 more key skills to being a lawyer on the internet. Between now and then, go to workonyourgameuniversity.com if you want to not be a lawyer on the internet, but be able to explain yourself, break things down, and make it easy to understand for the people in your audience. Whatever your skill is, your expertise, you want to be able to break it down so that they can get it, they can apply it, they can use it and get a result from it, which is what all business people do. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. Have me, the internet lawyer, as your coach, and let's get to work on that. Tomorrow, part 2. Work on your game. Dre, all